Everyone in the studio was waiting for an answer, but no one was ready for that truth. Dr. Phil stood motionless, the sealed envelope trembling slightly in his hands. The cameras kept rolling, but something had shifted. This wasn't just another episode. This was the moment a family secret 40 years in the making was about to shatter everything. What happened next would become one of the most unforgettable moments in the show's history. It had started 3 weeks earlier when Sarah Mitchell, a 38-year-old teacher from Ohio, contacted the show's producers with a story that seemed almost too painful to be real. Her grandmother, Dorothy, had whispered something on her deathbed 6 months ago, something that had haunted Sarah every single day since. "Your mother isn't who you think she is." Those 7 words had torn through Sarah's reality like a blade through silk. Her mother, Rebecca, had raised her as a single parent, always claiming Sarah's father had died in a car accident before she was born. It was a story Sarah had accepted her entire life. But Dorothy's dying confession suggested something far more complex, far more devastating. The rumor that had circulated through the family for decades, whispered at reunions and hushed during holidays, was that Rebecca wasn't Sarah's biological mother at all. That Sarah was actually Rebecca's younger sister's child, a sister who had died under mysterious circumstances when Sarah was just an infant. But nobody in the family had ever dared to speak it out loud. Until now. Dr. Phil had listened to Sarah's story during the pre-interview and immediately recognized this wasn't just another family drama. This was generational trauma, identity crisis, and decades of silence colliding in real time. He agreed to help, but only on one condition. Everyone involved had to commit to learning the truth, whatever it might be. Rebecca had reluctantly agreed to appear on the show. At 62 years old, she walked onto that stage carrying the weight of 4 decades of secrecy. Her hands shook as she sat down. Her eyes refused to meet Sarah's. "Rebecca," Dr. Phil began gently. "Sarah has lived her entire life believing you're her mother. But she's learned there may be another truth. Before we go any further, I need to ask you directly. Is Sarah your biological daughter?" The studio went silent. Every audience member leaned forward. The cameras zoomed in on Rebecca's face. She opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. Her voice cracked. "I raised her. I've been her mother since she was 3 months old. That's what matters." "That's not what I asked," Dr. Phil said, his voice firm but not unkind. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Mom, please. Just tell me the truth." Rebecca looked at her daughter. The woman she had raised, loved, protected, and something broke inside her. "Your biological mother was my sister, Linda. She died when you were a baby. I promised I would raise you as my own." The studio erupted. Gasps echoed through the audience. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth, even though part of her had known this was coming. But Dr. Phil raised his hand. "Hold on. There's more to this story, isn't there, Rebecca?" Rebecca's face crumpled. "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do." Dr. Phil's voice was steady, grounded. "Linda didn't just die. Tell Sarah how her mother really died." The silence that followed was suffocating. "She took her own life," Rebecca whispered. 3 months after you were born. She couldn't. She wasn't ready to be a mother. She was only 19. And I couldn't let you grow up thinking your mother didn't want you." Sarah stood up, her legs unsteady. "You lied to me. For 38 years. I protected you," Rebecca said desperately. "I gave you a mother. I gave you stability. I gave you love. You gave me a lie," Sarah choked out. Dr. Phil stood and walked between them. This was the moment he had been preparing for. "Sarah, sit down." "Rebecca, look at me." Both women obeyed, though their eyes remained locked on each other. "Here's what we're going to do," Dr. Phil said. "We're going to take a breath. We're going to remember that the person sitting across from you is someone you love. And then we're going to deal with the next piece of this. Subscribe and leave a comment. because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. What next piece? Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Phil reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the envelope. Before this show, you both agreed to DNA testing. Not just to confirm the maternity question, we already knew that answer, but to find out something else. Rebecca's face went pale. No. Phil, don't. You signed the consent form, Rebecca. You agreed to the truth. What is he talking about? Sarah demanded. Dr. Phil looked directly into the camera, then back at the two women. We tested Sarah's DNA against Rebecca's. And we also tested it against Linda's preserved medical records from the hospital where she gave birth. And? Sarah's voice trembled. Dr. Phil stopped. He actually froze mid-sentence, the envelope still sealed in his hands. The production crew later said they'd never seen him do that before, just stop completely, as if he was reconsidering whether to move forward. Off camera, before we taped this segment, I reviewed these results with our medical consultant, Dr. Phil said slowly. And I want to be very clear about something. What I'm about to share will answer your question, Sarah. But it will also raise another one that I don't think either of you anticipated. Rebecca started crying. Not the quiet tears from before, but deep, shaking sobs. Mom? Sarah's anger began to shift into something else. Fear. Dr. Phil opened the envelope. He read the contents silently, his face unreadable. Then he looked up. Sarah, Linda was your biological mother. That's confirmed. But Rebecca. He paused. Rebecca is not Linda's biological sister. The studio erupted in confused murmurs. Even the audience didn't understand what that meant. Sarah blinked. What? But your sisters. You grew up together. Your parents were my parents, Rebecca said through her tears. But not Linda's. Linda was adopted when she was 2 years old. We didn't find out until after she died. Our mother, your grandmother Dorothy, she told me on her own deathbed, a year before yours. But Dr. Phil wasn't finished. The DNA results show something else. He continued. Sarah, your genetic markers indicate Native American ancestry on your maternal side. Significant ancestry. Linda was part of a closed adoption from a reservation in South Dakota in the 1960s. Sarah sat frozen. Her entire identity, who she was, where she came from, her very DNA, was being rewritten in real time. I don't understand, she whispered. Why does this matter? Why are you telling me this? Dr. Phil sat down next to her. His voice softened in a way the audience rarely heard. Because identity matters, Sarah. Knowing where you come from matters. Not because it changes who you've become, but because you deserve the full truth of your story. He pulled out a small card from his pocket and handed it to her. This is the contact information for the adoption agency that handled Linda's case. They've agreed to help you search for your biological family if you want to. There may be aunts, uncles, cousins, a whole other family that doesn't even know you exist. Sarah stared at the card as if it were a live grenade. The studio audience had gone completely silent. Several people were crying. Dr. Phil turned to Rebecca. And you? You have spent almost 4 decades carrying this secret alone. You raised a child as your own, protected her from a painful truth, and sacrificed your own peace to give her stability. That is not nothing, Rebecca. That is love. Then why does she hate me? Rebecca sobbed. I don't hate you, Sarah said suddenly. Both women looked at each other. I'm angry. I'm confused. I feel like I don't even know who I am anymore. But I don't hate you. Dr. Phil stood again. Here's what I want you both to understand. This revelation, this truth, it doesn't erase the past 38 years. Rebecca, you are Sarah's mother in every way that matters except biology. You changed her diapers. You stayed up with her when she was sick. You taught her to read, to drive, to be the woman she is today. He turned to Sarah. And you, Sarah, are exactly who you've always been. Your DNA doesn't define your character. Your heritage is part of your story, yes, but it's not the whole story. Who you are is a combination of nature and nurture, and Rebecca gave you the nurture part with everything she had. The camera caught something extraordinary then. Sarah reached across the space between them and took Rebecca's hand. I'm still angry, Sarah said quietly. I'm going to need time. But I need you to know something, Mom. You're still my mom. Biology doesn't change that. Rebecca squeezed her daughter's hand so tightly her knuckles went white. I love you. I have always loved you. I'm so sorry I lied. I know. Dr. Phil let the moment breathe. The cameras stayed on the two women, hands clasped, tears flowing, beginning the painful process of rebuilding trust. After what felt like an eternity, Dr. Phil spoke again. We're going to take a break. When we come back, I have someone I want you both to meet. The audience murmured in confusion as they cut to commercial. During the break, Dr. Phil did something else no one expected. He brought Sarah and Rebecca backstage, away from the cameras and the audience. In the privacy of his offstage office, he sat them down. I want to be very clear about what happens next, he said. Sarah, if you choose to pursue contact with your biological family, that is entirely your choice. Rebecca has agreed not to interfere. But I also want you to understand something else. He pulled out another document. Linda's medical records indicate she was struggling with severe postpartum depression and possible bipolar disorder. There was no mental health support available to her. The family, Rebecca's family, didn't understand what was happening. Linda's death wasn't a rejection of you, Sarah. It was a tragedy of untreated mental illness. Sarah's hands shook as she absorbed this. I'm telling you this, Dr. Phil continued, because you need context. Not excuses. Not justifications. Just context. Your mother, Linda, was sick. And Rebecca stepped in because she loved both of you. He handed Sarah a folder. This contains information about mental health resources, genetic counseling, and support groups for people who've lost parents to suicide. I want you to use them. Promise me. Sarah nodded, unable to speak. When they returned to the stage, there was a woman waiting in the wings. Sarah, Rebecca, Dr. Phil said, I'd like you to meet Dr. Angela Morrison. She's a genealogist and adoption specialist who has been working on Linda's case for the past 2 weeks. Dr. Morrison stepped forward, carrying a laptop. I've been able to trace Linda's biological family. She was born to a woman named Mary Whitehorse on the Pine Ridge Reservation. Mary was 16 when she had Linda and gave her up because she couldn't provide for her. She turned the laptop screen towards Sarah. Mary is still alive. She's 78 years old and lives in Rapid City. And Sarah, she's been looking for Linda for 50 years. She never stopped wondering what happened to her daughter. The revelation hit like a shockwave. You mean? Sarah could barely form the words. My biological grandmother is alive? And she wants to meet you, Dr. Morrison said gently. If you're willing. Sarah looked at Rebecca, then at Dr. Phil, then back at the screen showing a photo of an elderly Native American woman with kind eyes and silver hair. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I want to meet her. Dr. Phil smiled, a real, genuine smile that reached his eyes. Then let's make that happen. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. 3 months later, Dr. Phil flew Sarah and Rebecca to South Dakota. The cameras captured the moment Sarah met Mary Whitehorse for the first time. Two strangers connected by DNA and loss, standing on a reservation neither had called home, embracing like they'd known each other forever. Mary told stories about Linda's early years, showed photos Sarah had never seen, shared traditions and songs from their Lakota heritage. And Rebecca stood beside Sarah the entire time, not as a replacement, but as the mother who had earned her place through love and sacrifice. The bracelet Mary gave Sarah that day, a traditional Lakota beaded piece, became Sarah's most treasured possession. She wore it every single day, A physical reminder that she belonged to two families, two stories, two types of love. Dr. Phil received a letter 6 months after the episode aired. "Dear Dr. Phil," Sarah wrote, "I won't lie and say everything is perfect. I'm still processing. But meeting Mary changed my life. I understand now that family isn't just biology or just who raises you. It's about all the people who choose to love you. Rebecca chose me when Linda couldn't. Mary never stopped looking. That's not betrayal. That's grace. Thank you for helping me see that." Dr. Phil kept that letter on his desk. In a career filled with thousands of stories, this one stayed with him. Because it wasn't about solving a problem, it was about honoring complexity and understanding that love exists in multiple forms. The episode became one of the most watched in the show's history. It sparked a national conversation about adoption secrecy and mental health. Legislation in 3 states was influenced by Sarah's story, opening sealed adoption records. Sarah became an advocate for adoptee rights and suicide prevention. Rebecca and Sarah's relationship healed slowly, built on honesty. Mary got to know her granddaughter, passing down traditions that had skipped a generation. Dr. Phil's closing reflection captured everything. "When that envelope was in my hands, I was holding more than DNA results. I was holding the key to identity, healing, and resolution. The moment Sarah and Rebecca held hands despite the pain, that's why I do this work. Not to expose secrets, but to create space for truth and genuine connection." The DNA envelope now sits in Dr. Phil's archive, a reminder that sometimes the questions we're most afraid to ask lead us to the answers we most need to hear.